Recently Purrely has been released in MasterDuel, and since I do not have all the necessary cards just yet, and I do want to give you guys some quality content, so this will be our new in-depth guide on Purrely, where we'll discuss currently available cards, how often you want to run it, and will provide a sample build with additional options. We will go over other interesting full builds, combos, or test hands in different videos. In the TCG, Purrely was released initially in Amazing Defenders and got some additional support in Cyberstorm Access and Duelist Nexus. In MasterDuel we have the Amazing Defenders and Cyberstorm Access cards at our disposal, so we'll build our deck as such. We will discuss the other Purrelys in more detail in an updated guide when they are released, and a link to that video will be posted here. Moving on, we start with the main deck monsters, with plain old Purrely. You can opt to play 2 or 3, but most people will go for 3 of this card. When summoned, Purrely can excavate the top 3 cards and possibly add a Purrely card from deck to our hand, which is not a once per turn effect. Also, and this is the important bit, depending on the Purrely quick play spell card in your hand, you can use it and Purrely to exceed summon the small a Purrely that mentioning the quick play spell in its text. Next up, Purrely, which is also often run at 3. When this card is summoned, you can fetch a non-quick play spell or a trap from your deck. However, this effect is only once per turn. Also, similarly to Purrely, it can special summon an a Purrely from your deck that is mentioning the quick play spell card, this time shown from our grave. Speaking of the quick play spells, we currently have access to all 4 of them. All 4 spells can special summon a level 1 Purrely from our main deck, but have different criteria to be activated. Also, they have an additional effect when attached to a Purrely Exceed monster, which can stack by the way. So let's look at them one by one. First up, Sleepy Memory. Sleepy Memory is easily activated as it reduces the next battle or effect damage taken this turn to 0. Then by discarding a card we can summon a level 1 Purrely from our deck. When this card is attached to a Purrely Exceed monster, we are allowed to draw a card during our opponent's standby phase. This makes it a cheeky card, as this effect will be triggered once per monster. So if we would change our monster during the opponent's standby phase, we'll get to draw additional cards. Second, Happy Memory. Happy Memory can only be activated when it can target a card on field to protect from destruction once, before discarding a card from your hand to summon a level 1 Purrely monster. When attached to a Purrely Exceed monsters, it gains an additional attack. Next up, Pretty Memory, which is the easiest one to activate as it just gives both players plus 1000 life points. Then by discarding a card, you'll get to summon a level 1 Purrely monster. When attached to a Purrely Exceed, you can send one other card you control to the graveyard to target one card from your opponent to be attached to the Purrely Exceed. And lastly, Delicious Memory. It needs a monster on the field to be activated, which it will protect from battle destruction for 2 turns, then by discarding a card, you'll get to summon a level 1 Purrely monster. When attached, the Purrely Exceed monster gains 300 attack and defense for each material attached to it, which stacks up quickly. Good to know is that the discard effect happens on resolution, meaning that it can trigger Dark Worlds. But also when it gets ashed, you will not discard a card. Anyway, a quick roundup: Sleepy is a draw machine, Happy is an OTK machine, Pretty is a control machine, Delicious is a bow boost machine, and Machine King is just a machine that has nothing to do with this deck, but just wanted to mention it exists. Just give it some love. Anyway, all 4 quick play spells should be maxed out in your deck, so play 3 of all of them. Since all quick play spells correspond to a specific small a Purrely extra deck monster, we might want to take a look at those next. A Purrely Happiness can be summoned by a level 1 Purrely monster after revealing Happy Memory. Happiness is used as an OTK card, as with its effect it can half a monster's attack on the field and often already has Happy Memory attached to it for additional attack. Another effect it has, that it shares with the other small a Purrelys, is that up to 3 times per turn, you'll get to attach a Purrely quick play card when it is activated. Also, specifically for Happiness, when it attaches that card, you can bounce of your opponent's 1 spell/trap to their hand. The when clause for both is important, so immediately activate its effect after activating your quick play to not miss timing. Anyway, as a game ender, it makes sense to only run 1. But if you have trouble finishing games, you could opt to run 2. A Purrely Beauty is your monster negator and is summoned by a level 1 Purrely and Pretty Memory. When Pretty Memory is attached to this card, the monster negation is a quick effect. This card can be considered to be run at either 1 or 2. And when we activate a Purrely quick play we get to suck it up whilst also changing the battle position of a monster. Last of the current lineup of a Purrelys is a Purrely Plump, which is generally seen as the best one. Plump can be summoned by a level 1 Purrely and Delicious Memory and has the effect that it can attach up to 2 spells and traps from either graveyard to be attached to this card. When Delicious Memory is attached, this is a quick effect. Also, when we activate a Purrely quick play and attach it as a material, we will get to banish one monster on the field until the end phase. And both of these effects are what makes this card the better one, as it is an easy gateway to the deck's boss monster, which we will address shortly, but can also function as an interrupt. Therefore, we often run this card at 2. Sleepy is also associated with an A Purrely, but that one will be released later. Then our boss monsters, our Xpurrelys, and we'll start with the slightly less useful one, which is Xpurrely Happiness. This is definitely an upgraded version of its A Purrely counterpart, and functions a similar role, namely OTKing. We can overlay this card on top of another level 2 Exceed monster with 5 or more materials, and by detaching one card from it, we can Dark Ruler the opponent's field. When a level 1 Purrely is attached to it, this effect cannot be responded to. And when it attacks, it will burn the opponent for an additional 1500 damage. In the early days of Purrely, this card was only run at 1 and was even cut entirely later on, as most of the times its smaller form already did the job well enough so this card was no longer needed. Our best monster is definitely Xpurrely Noir, which means black in French by the way, and can also be summoned on top of another level 2 Exceed monster with 5 or more materials and is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects when it has 5 or more materials. Furthermore, and this is the main reason why it is great, by detaching 2 cards, it can target and send one card our opponent controls or is in their graveyard back to the deck. And this effect is not once per turn. As long as you have 2 or more materials, you can continue to send cards back to their deck. And even better, when a level 1 Purrely is attached to it, this is a quick effect, meaning that it can be used during the opponent's turn. We will almost always run this card at 2. This card is also the reason why Plump is a great card, as we can collect spells and traps with Plump, getting to 5 so we can put Noir on top of it. This will round up the Purrely extra deck for now. Let's continue with one of its best consistency cards, my friend Purrely. By paying 500, we can reveal 3 Purrely cards from our deck, which do not have to be different names by the way, for our opponent to randomly select one for us to add to our hand. We will often use this card to grab us the quick play spells. Next, if a face-up Purrely Exceed monster leaves the field, we can add up to 3 different Purrely quick play spells from our graveyard to our hand. We will always want to play this card at 3. Last up, 2 useful cards that can be searched by Purrely, the field spell Stray Purrely Street and the trap Purrely. Stray Street makes Purrely monsters untargetable, which is a nice form of protection. Next, when a Purrely monster leaves the field due to the opponent, you'll get to summon a level 1 Purrely monster from your deck. Also, during the end phase, you can attach a Purrely quick play from the grave to one of your Purrely Exceed monsters. Purrely is a trap often used to scale up your A Purrelys, and when activated you can target a Purrely Exceed monster and summon another Purrely Exceed monster with a different rank on top of it, getting all of its materials. It will send the summoned Purrely Exceed monster to the grave after the end phase of the next turn, so use it wisely. Also, it can banish itself from the grave to shuffle back up to 3 Purrely monsters back into our deck. Since these cards can be searched by Purrely, you can get away with playing one each. However, if you have the additional space, you can run more of either, but probably likely run more of Purrely. And that brings us to the Purrely deck core. To round out the main deck, we can consider running some additional engines such as Dark World, Danger, or some Volcanic Shells, which will function as easy discard fodder for our quick play spells. Obviously, we want to include some hand traps and perhaps some board breakers for going second plays. These heavily depend on the meta, but running Santa Claus may be beneficial for a happiness OTK. Just let me know in the comments if you'd like to see this OTK in action. Then for the extra deck, since we are running Exceed monsters with a bunch of materials, Downed Magician plus Zeus is always a good option. Also, since Purrely itself is a level 1 and easily summoned, we can run some great rank 1 Exceeds, such as Assembled Nightingale, Ensemble Robin, or Sylvan Princess Sprite. Lastly, we fill up the extra deck with some generic easy to summon Link monsters. And there you have it, and as pure as it can get, Purrely deck. A link to this deck list can be found in the description for when you want to have a card by card list. This deck is capable of being run alongside other bigger engines. You can consider increasing the amount of Dark World cards to play a Dark World hybrid. Same thing can be done with either Sprites, Naturias, or Kashtiras. And I think there must be some other great options as well. So if you have a great one yourself, do not hesitate posting it in the comments. Purrely is very close to its max potential and is therefore likely to have a meta impact. The current set of cards that we have already warranted a limit of Sleepy and Delicious in the OCG and TCG respectively. Therefore, this deck is a great investment now and in the near future, unless Konami's ban hammer will smack these cute cats off stage. The next few days, some test hand combo guides regarding Purrely will follow, so stay tuned. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you need anything else to watch, let the YouTube algorithm introduce you to some videos that are put on your screen about now. Happy viewing!